Okay, great. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Let's begin this morning with Peskei D'Zimrah. Last time we learned together 2 weeks ago, we focused on the korbanos, very beautiful ideas regarding the importance of Talmud Torah being part of our prayer service, and specifically why we pick the korbanos. If we had to pick something to say, something to learn, why we focus on the korbanos. So as we finish this section regarding korbanos, the next part in the Siddur is Peskei D'Zimrah. So today's shir is going to be just a general introduction to Peskei D'Zimrah, and then Bezrat Hashem next week we'll focus on Baruch Shemar more specifically. But today, just words of introduction to Peskei D'Zimrah. So why do we say Peskei D'Zimrah? It seems to be a very, very old tefillah, a very old part of the Siddur itself, because you can find statements in the Gemara that speak about Peskei D'Zimrah. You won't find it in the Mishnah, but you will find it in the Gemara. I think Rabbi Schwab points out that there are a number of very important mitzvos that are not directly referenced in the Mishnah, but were certainly part of the oral Torah, and only were written down in times of the Gemara. For example, the halachos of tefillin, the halachos of mezuzah. That's not really found particularly much at all in the Mishnah, but it's found elucidated in great detail in the Gemara. So this would be another example where the Mishnah does not speak of Peskei D'Zimrah, but it is certainly mentioned heavily, I shouldn't say heavily, but there are a number of references to Peskei D'Zimrah in the Gemara, and we see from there that it's an ancient part of the Siddur. This is not something that was added on 500 years ago. It was something that was added on already, I would venture to say, more than 1,000 years ago, more than 2,000 years ago, if not earlier than that. So the Gemara, let me just show you a couple of references to Peskei D'Zimrah in the Gemara, and we'll also learn some important lessons from these passages themselves. If you look in source number 1, a fascinating Gemara, Amar Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi says, Yihei chelki migomrei halel b'chol yom. That my portion should be amongst those who say Hallel every day. That's the Gemara. That's what the Gemara says. Yehei chelki mi gomrei Hallel b'chayom. That my portion should be amongst those people who say Hallel every day. The Gemara is not so comfortable with that. Is that really the case? You're allowed to say Hallel every day. V'ha'amar mar. Didn't the Master teach us? Korei Hallel b'chol yom, someone who reads Hallel every day, harei zeh mecharif umegadif. Such a person is basically committing blasphemy. They're cursing God. So how can you say that my portion should be amongst those who say Hallel every day?
I didn't understand. I read that. Can you please explain?
We am going to do that in a minute. So ki kamrinan. So when the Gemara spoke of the importance of saying Hallel every day, Peskei D'Zimrah. It's talking about Peskei D'Zimrah. So already you see, from times of the Gemara, referencing earlier practices, Peskei D'Zimrah is a critical part of the Siddur. What's the difference? I'd like to focus on that. What's the difference? Why is it that if you say Hallel, which is also just a number of prakim of Tehillim, if you say Hallel every day, it's considered to be blasphemy. But if you say the psukim from Peskei D'Zimrah, same Sefer Tehillim, pretty much, it's beautiful. Right? Everyone understand the question? If you say the prakim of Tehillim that comprise Hallel, blasphemy. If you say the prakim of Tehillim that comprise Peskei D'Zimrah, to be praised. What's the difference between the two? Offhand, any thoughts?
Well, Peskei D'Zimrah, most of them start Hallelujah.
Okay, so?
The beginning, so it's the same wording.
Okay.
Hallel.
Okay.
And also, don't we praise before we start? Before.
Beautiful. We're going to come to that. That absolutely an element of prayer needs to be praised before we go into asking. That's absolutely the case. But we have to refine the distinction, though. What's the difference between saying Hallel, what we call Hallel, which is a big no-no, and versus Peskei D'Zimrah, which is something that is a wonderful thing. So Rashi in source number 2 explains as follows: Hareze mecharif u'megadif. If a person says Hal every day, it's blasphemy. Why? Shebenevim harishonim tiknu lomar beprakim l'shevach v'hodaya. The Hallel was instituted by the very early prophets as a way of giving praise and thanks to the Almighty. Kedarminim ba'arvei Pesachim, as the Gemara teaches us in Maseches Pesachim. V'zeh hakorei tamid below itah. This one who reads these prakim every day, not in the right time, eino ella kimizamer shir umitlamitz. It's the way I understand it, it's as if a person is poking fun. The original prophets instituted that there be special prakim of Tehillim recited in a moment of thanksgiving, of particular thanksgiving and joy. So if you do that every day, it's like you're poking fun. You're basically saying, oh, those prakim of Tehillim that the prophets chose, it's nothing, it's not really meaningful, right? Like familiarity breeds contempt. So the more familiar you make yourself with these prakim of Tehillim, when you say it each and every day, you're devaluing the beauty of those Tehillim and the visceral response, right? The emotions that are supposed to come when you say that type of Hallel. So that's not appropriate. What is appropriate? Peskei D'Zimrah. Look at Rashi. Shnei mizmorim shel hilulim. So interestingly, Rashi's approach or Rashi's siddur included at least 2 prakim of Tehillim. Hallelu at Hashem and Hashemayim and Hallelu kel b'kodsho. Those are referencing the Hallelujahs that we say after Ashrei. We know we say a series of 5 Hallelujahs at the end of Ashrei. Rashi mentions 2 of them. I don't think that those were the only prakim of Tehillim that Rashi said in Peskei D'Zimrah, but Rashi is certainly fixating on those 2. We can speak a little bit more about why Rashi brings down those 2 prakim, but I'm going to table that discussion for now. Just let's focus in. Rashi says, Hallel, what we call Hallel, is not appropriate to be said every day. Why? Because those prakim, those chapters, were instituted and designated for a specific purpose. And when you keep going back to those same chapters and reciting Hallel every day, you're devaluing the special nature of those prakim. But the rabbis told you to specifically say certain prakim every day. And that's a beautiful thing. That's a beautiful thing. And that's what you should be doing. And that's what Rabbi Yossi says, that my portion should be amongst those who say the appropriate chapters every day. I think we can take it even deeper. If you look at the Maharsha in source number 3, the Maharsha wrote a beautiful commentary on the Talmud. He actually writes 2 commentaries on the Talmud. One is on the Agadita, the more homiletical part of the Talmud, and then he has a separate commentary on the halach, on the legal sides of the Talmud. So this is more on the homiletical side. So he writes in source number 3, Harezim mecharif, that a person says Hallel every day, it's blasphemy. Mishum da Hallel nitkan nitakein biyamim yuchadim al hanes. Hallel, as we call it Hallel, was instituted specific days because of the miracle. Lifarsein ki hakadosh baruch hu bal hayicholes, because it's a way of publicizing the fact that God is all powerful and He has the ability l'shanos hateva habriya. He can change nature. Sheshina biyamim elu. After all, we say Hallel, for example, on Pesach, because God split the sea. We say Hallel on Hanukkah, because God made the miracle that the oil, which should have burned in one day, lasted 8 days. These are all reflective of God intervening on a supernatural way. V'nimtza misha omro b'chol yom. Therefore, if a person says this every day, lo yisparseim omro al hanes gam biyamim haruim lefarseim nisei Hashem yisparach. You see, the point of Hallel that we say on Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot is to represent the wondrous miracles that God did. But if we say it every day, then it's not reflecting the wondrous miracles. We're not fixating on what we really want to say Hallel for. Kriyas Yamsuf, Ma'amad Har Sinai, Sukkos. So by saying it every day, we are taking away the focus on the supernatural that we do focus on when we say it at the appropriate times. We make it like any regular prayer, and that's not appropriate. It's basically saying, like, God, we're saying these every day, we're not focusing on the supernatural. And it's like, oh, it's as if you're saying, God, you're not responsible for the supernatural. You can't do the supernatural. And that's why it's mecharif umagadif. That's why it's blasphemy. Because if you only say Hallel at the designated times, you're focusing on the supernatural miracles. But if you end up saying Hallel every day, even when they're not supernatural miracles that you are focusing on, so basically the implication is that, well, God, you're not responsible for those supernatural things. You never did those supernatural things. And that itself that's blasphemy. That's blasphemy. So it's similar to Rashi in the sense that if you say it... I'm sorry?
If the soul of the sea is included.
That's interesting. That's true. But that's might not have been the initial part of Peskei D'Zimrah, and it's not the thrust of Peskei D'Zimrah. Look at the next paragraph of the Maharsha. Umeshani be Peskei D'Zimrah keperish Rashi beis mizmarim shal hilulim de'eno ba'im lefarnesem nisav. In Peskei D'Zimrah, certainly in that third Hallelujah, we're praising God within nature, right? Hallelujah Hashem min hashamayim. Let's praise God from the heavens, meaning within the normal sphere of the world, within the normal natural laws that govern the way this world works. That's what we focus on in Peskei D'Zimrah. Ela shehem divrei hilul v'shavach debai b'chol yom kedamrinan la'olam yisrael. We'll come back to that. The bottom line that Maharsha is telling us is that the Hallel, let me rephrase that the prakim, the chapters that we focus on when we say Hallel on the 3 festivals, for example, and on Hanukkah, that's a Hallel of God in the supernatural manifestation, such as splitting of the sea, the 10 plagues, giving of the Torah, having the oil last for 8 days. We focus on that at specific times, but that's not the way God interacts with the world. God interacts with the world in the normal fashion. And if you look, not all of them, but if you look, many of the chapters that we see in Peskei D'Zimrah focus on God in nature. And if you end up shifting the focus one way or the other, you lose something. Does that make sense? So just for example, look at the third Hallelujah, which is one of the ones that, Rashi pointed our attention to. So I'm looking now at Psalm 148. I'm just looking at the middle of the paragraph. Praise Hashem from the earth, sea, giants, and all watery depths, fire and hail, snow and vapor, stormy wind, fulfilling his sword, mountains and at hills, fruitful trees and all cedars. The bottom line is it's God within nature. So the difference between Hallel and Peskei D'Zimrah, explains the Maharsha, is that Hallel is God above nature, Peskei D'Zimrah is God within nature. So Peskei D'Zimrah, seeing God in nature, is something you have to do every day. That's what Rabbi Yossi said, Yehi chelki migomrei Hallel, that my portion should be amongst those who say Hallel every day, because that's where we see God within nature. But if you take the root of God above nature, and you make that every day's praise, it doesn't happen every day. So it's almost like you're saying, God, you can't be above nature. That's blasphemy. And that's the difference between the 2 Hallels. Does everyone understand that?
No,
Yeah.
The way you just explained it using Psalm 148 is that, of course, probably the greatest miracle of, the greatest miracle of all is actually the order, the locked-in order of everyday life, that we're not trailing.
Absolutely.
That it really should be said, reminding ourselves no, it wasn't this dramatic thing over here, dramatic thing, but remember, we still have our feet planted on the ground. The sun and the earth aren't colliding.
You're right.
So
Absolutely. Right. So it's not so different from Rashi. I just think it gives more depth to Rashi. Right? Rashi just says that the prophets instituted that we say Hallel at specific times, and if we say it more often, it's like we're poking fun. What does that mean exactly? So I think the Maharsha gives it more teeth. If we say Hallel all the time for the supernatural, but that's not the way God manifests itself. We don't see supernatural things every day. We don't even recall supernatural things every day. So then it's like saying, well, it didn't really happen. That's blasphemy. But absolutely, the prophets wanted us to say the chapters that comprise Peskei D'Zimrah every day as helping us see God in nature. The Meiri, finally, the Meiri in source number 4 has a different approach. Well, I'll read it inside just a moment. I'll share with you outside. The Meiri says that Hallel that we say on Pesach, Sukkot, Shavuos, etc., focuses on things that have happened in the past. And when we get up to daven every day, we're praying for things that are happening right now and are happening in the future. It's not to say that we're not thankful for things that happened in the past, but if our focus is only on Kriyas Yamsuf, is only on the various other miracles that we praise in the Hallel, so it's almost like saying, God, you can't help me currently. You could only help me in the past, you can't help me right now. And that is blasphemy. See, everybody has to explain what's blasphemous. It's such strong language. What's blasphemous? So it's either intuiting that God, or it's either implying that God can no longer do supernatural things, or it's focusing on, like the Meiri says, that God can't help me anymore. God only helped me in the past. Either way you slice it, it's blasphemy.
It's almost blasphemous to ignore the daily.
Absolutely. You're right. So look at what the Meiri writes in source number 4. Hakore halal b'chol yom. If a person reads halal every day, harehu keporek ol min hatfila. It's as if he's removing the burden, the yoke of prayer. Shehalal lo nitan ela lahoda ama shavar. The whole point of halal is only to give thanks for what happened in the past. Be'eza nes o be'eza geula, referring to some miracle or some redemption. V'chol shekoveya b'chol yom. Whoever establishes this halal every day, domek kimi she'ein lo litzok. Really spalal is man ha'omed. It's as if you don't have anyone to daven to for your issues today. O lahaba. Or in the future. Val davar zehu kori mecharif. That's why you're considered someone who's blasphemous. Because you only can focus on the past, you have to also focus on the future. V'yesh mefarshim hatam. There are others who explain the reason. Shemitoch she'omro tamid v'shalo b'ta'am. If a person says the Hallel every day without really understanding it, eino margish leis orer alav b'yamim shanikva bo lahodal hanisim. You see, if you habituate yourself to saying Hallel every day, so then when it becomes time to say those same words on a big miracle, you're going to lose the flavor. You're going to lose the flavor. You're going to, because you lose the flavor, you're almost going to like say, well, it never happened. You have to keep things fresh. So if you say a regular Hallel every day, you're going to lose it, because by the time Pesach rolls around, it's like a blasé, and you're not going to appreciate the miracles. And before you know it, you're going to say, oh, the miracles never happened. And that could really lead to blasphemy. Okay, Aval just skipping 2 lines about Peskei D'Zimrah, v'hu mitehila l'David ad sof, talim mitzvah l'omer b'chol yom. Basically, Peskei D'Zimrah, we're not as worried. So yes, it's true, and we're going to come back to this. With Peskei D'Zimrah also, we say it so often, we don't focus on it, but the stakes are a little bit lower. Because Hallel is supposed to lead us to an appreciation for the great miracles. If we lose focus on that, it becomes normal. We don't really believe in the big miracles. That can lead to cataclysmic types of, catastrophic, I should say, results. Peskei D'Zimrah, if you become habituated, you say it too fast, it's not good, but we're not worried about what the theological kind of outgrowth of that would be, if that makes sense. So basically you have 3/4 different approaches. The difference between Hallel, which we don't want you saying every day, and Peskei D'Zimrah, which we want you saying every day. The prophets only asked us to say Hallel at specific times, Peskei D'Zimrah all the time. The Maharsha says that if you focus on God above nature, but God is not existing above nature all the time, you're going to come to be, you're blaspheming. God doesn't exist. The Meiri says, no, it's a function of where are you putting your focus? On the history of what happened in the past? Is that saying that you don't think God can help you in the future? And lastly, the concern that you're going to become so habituated to the Hallel that it won't make an impact when you actually meant to say it on a miracle, and you're not going to be impressed by the miracle. You're going to forget about the miracle, and that could really lead to blasphemy. So a number of different approaches, the difference between Hallel and Peskei D'Zimrah. Yes, Jeff?
And it's interesting, at the end of this chapter in Rav Shlomo, it's very interesting. He says, one is not to hurriedly recite these songs,
right,
but rather they should be said deliberately. If there are circumstances in which it is difficult to recite the entire Peskei D'Zimrah properly in this fashion, it is better to say only a small piece properly than to rush and stumble through the entire section. Better a few prayers with concentration than
Right.
many.
Absolutely. So we're gonna talk about that also. One of the risks we run with saying Peskei D'Zimrah every day is that it becomes normal, it becomes the habit, and we don't say the words like they should be said. And that's a real challenge, but it's a challenge that the rabbis wanted us to meet, as opposed to Hallel, where they said don't meet it, just don't say it, unless you're supposed to say it because it's Pesach, Sukkot, Shavuos, Rosh Chodesh, Chanukah. A very, 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 very big difference between the two. So I want to show you another Gemara, which also speaks about the importance of saying Peskei D'Zimrah in general, and it's something that Judy alluded to in source number 5. Darash Rabbi Simlai, La'olam Yisader Adam Shivcho Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, V'yachar Kach Yispalel. A person should always prepare praise for God, and only then pray. So you have to start praising, and then you pray. And this is something intuitive. I think we all know it. Certainly children know it. When they want to get a sweet for dessert, right? They first say, Ima, dinner was so delicious. I'm so thankful for all of my green beans and how hard you worked to prepare them. You know where this is going. And Ma, can I have a lollipop? Can I have some chocolate? Right? My kids know they don't have to do that. They just go to shul and they get showered with all this stuff. But the bottom line is, it makes sense. The proper way, if you want to go for an ask, is you have to first praise the person that you're asking. Now, we're not tricking God. God understands our intentions from the very outset, but it's also a matter of derech eretz. It's not appropriate for anybody to ask anybody of anything by saying, just give me. You first have to work up to it. You have to treat anyone like a mensch, and we take that and we say, kal v'chomer, how much more so do we have to treat God that way? And this behavior, this type of approach, first praising and then asking, was actually modeled by nobody less than Moses. If you look in source number 5, the Gemara says, Minalon, that's the last word in the first line. How do we know this? How do we know that you first have to start with praise and then you go to prayer? Mimoshe, from none other than Moses. Dechsiv, the dal is a typo. Ve'eschanan el Hashem ba'esahi. I entreated God at that time. Right, this is Parshas Ve'eschanan, where Moshe is recalling what happened after he was given the punishment that he can't go into the land of Israel. So Moshe recalls, I entreated God at that time. V'ksiv Hashem Elokim atah chilosa leharoses avdecha. Moshe says, God, you began to show me as God lecha your greatness, v'as yadecha chazaka, and your mighty hand. Asher mikel b'shamayim u'va'aretz, asher yaseh k'masecha k'urasecha. God, who can do like you? Nobody. You're amazing. You're unparalleled. And after Moshe butters up God, if you will, what does it say? God, can I come in? Can I pass over that river and come on into the promised land? But Moses doesn't just say, God, can I come in? He first starts by saying, God, who is like you, who has done these unbelievable things like you have, nobody can. So there's first Shevach, and then there is Bakasha. There's first Shevach, and then there's Tefillah. When I use the word Tefillah in this context, I mean Bakasha, requests. So Peskei D'Zimrah plays a critical role, because we can't just start asking for things. We first have to lead up by giving words of praise. Peskei D'Zimrah, words of praise. Now, it's interesting, in the Shemona Esrei itself, we do the same thing. Because in Shemona Esrei, we know that the Shemona Esrei is comprised of 3 distinct segments. What's the first segment called? Shevach. It's called praise. Then that's the first 3 blessings that we pretty much always have. Then we have the middle section, which is the Bakasha, which are the requests. And then last, we have the Hodah, we have the thanks. So this Gemara is not only instructive in terms of setting up the Siddur Peskei D'Zimrah before asking for things, but even within Shemona Esrei itself, we have first Shevach and then Bakasha. But be it as it may, one way or the other, you see clearly that the concept of Peskei D'Zimrah is well founded in the Gemara. This is not something that was new, that was added on because the rabbis wanted to keep us in shul any longer. The concept of Peskei D'Zimrah, although not mentioned explicitly in the Mishnah, was clearly part of this Sidurim of the Jewish people. I don't know, going back to the very beginning, like the same time of Anshe Knesset HaGedolah, when they instituted Shemona Esrei, but it was clearly a very, very early addition to the Siddur. Its role is critically important. A, to help us see God in nature, which is why we're supposed to say it every day. And B, it serves in this fashion of the Shevach leading up to the Bakasha. That's point number 1. Why is it here? Where does it come from?
It says here, interestingly, the Ulam did not exist in the Mishkan but made its first appearance.
No, that's the ulam. That's a little bit different. That's where Rabbi Schwab has a beautiful idea, which we have not spoken about in this year, that prayer is like entering the temple.
He's just focusing on the ulam.
The ulam is the outer chamber of the temple, and so he says Peskei D'Zimrah is like being in the outer chamber as you're walking your way in. But I haven't chosen to focus on that type of imagery during these Siddur classes. Okay, but the next point I want to share with you, which I thought was really magnificent, and this I saw in Rabbi Schwab's Siddur, it's so beautiful. We talk about Peskei D'Zimrah, right? When you talk about praising, what words come to mind in our Jewish Hebrew lexicon? Hallelujah, Shira. Shira means to sing, to praise, and Zimra is also praise. So we know one of the beautiful parts of Judaism and Hebrew more specifically is that we have a lot of synonyms, but they are markedly different from one another. We have many words that mean the same thing, but the truth is there's always a nuanced difference between them. There are many, many examples of such a concept. Yeshua and Geula, right? Salvation, redemption. There are many, many different examples of words that seemingly mean the same, but actually are nuanced and sometimes not so nuanced in their differences. So what's the difference between Shira and Zimra? And I think this is just so beautiful. So what is Shir? Shir is song, but Rabbi Schwab points out that a Shir also means a leash. A leash. Let me just show you what I mean by that. In source number 6, this is a Mishnah in Masechet Shabbos, just talking about what you can carry on Shabbos. The Mishnah says, "V'chol ba'alei hashir," all animals that have a leash on them, yotzin b'shir, you can actually go out holding the leash, v'nimshachim b'shir, and you can drag them along with a leash. We're not getting into the specifics of the halacha, but I'm not making this up. The word shir means a leash. So what's the connection? Isn't that interesting? So what's the connection between shir and shira? So when we sing to Hashem, what's the point of a leash? What do you do with a leash? Right?
Control.
You control, but it's more than that. You keep connected. When you have a leash, so the owner of the dog is holding on to the dog. They're connected to one another. So through shira, through song, we're able to connect with the Almighty. It's a very, very powerful tool to connect with Hashem. That's shira.
The question is who's holding
Well, it doesn't. The parallel doesn't need to be perfect, but it conceptually represents a connection, a tight connection, and that's shira. Beautiful. What's Zimra? Peskei D'Zimrah.
song or
So yeah, it does mean song and rejoicing, but actually it also means lo sizmor. What's sizmor? Not like the doctor who retired. That was an article in the Times. Remember that Dr. Zizmor? Whatever. Okay.
we knew one.
What?
We knew somebody.
Okay, yeah. I think he originally came from Brooklyn. Anyways, he was a big Baal Tzedakah. So in source number 7, the Torah tells us, this is in Parshas Bahar, if I'm not mistaken, Uveshana hashvi'is Shabbat Shabbaton yelaret Shabbos Lashem. In the 7th year, you let the land lay fallow for God. Sadecha lo sizra, you can't plant your field. V'charmecha lo sizmor, you can't prune your vineyard. Sizmor, zomer, means to prune. Zomer is to prune. So in what sense are we pruning? What's the connection between praising and pruning? Some people like prunes, so they'll praise a prune. But no, Jeff, not bad, right? Nothing to write home about. But I guess that they say, oh man, I know I'm recorded, but easy come, easy go. But okay, get it with prunes and...
No. We're going to stay far away from those analogies, especially after yesterday, right?
So what's the connection between Zimra and Zomer, to prune? So Ray Schwab says this is just so beautiful that in life we get distracted, we get very, very preoccupied with things in life that we shouldn't necessarily get preoccupied with. We all have to have our professions, we have to support our families. Okay, but then there's a profession, and then there's someone whose profession is so overwhelming that it takes up every facet of their life. Or people can get into all sorts of nourishkeit, sports and this and that, and it leads you away from what you're supposed to be doing, which is essentially the service of God. So when you engage in praising the Almighty, and you're kind of refocusing, what are you doing? Ready for this, Judy? You're pruning away all of the externals that separate between you and the Almighty.
He calls it your misdirected desires.
Beautiful, misdirected, exactly. But every day we all our attention get turned in all sorts of directions. Some of them are worthwhile and some of them are not. And prayer is actually that time to kind of reconnect. We talked about that in the very beginning of the year. Hispala, according to Rav Hirsch, is a self-judgment. You're reflecting on your own life. What am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? It's a reflective experience. So to enhance that, we have Peskei D'Zimrah, where we focus on the beautiful psukim from Tanakh, essentially, and by doing so, we prune away all of the exteriors that have misguided us over the course of the day, the week, the month, whatever the time period is. That is such a beautiful idea. So Shira, connection. Zimra is to prune, to remove all of the externals and focus on what's truly important. And one second, Jeff, and Rabbi Schwab says, if you have that in mind, you are able to understand a fascinating halacha. The halacha is extremely, extremely strict regarding people who speak between the end of Peskei D'Zimrah and the Berachos Kriyat Shema. Right? We know when you have your siddur, right? When you finish Peskei D'Zimrah, you got to go from there right into Berachos Kriyat Shema. And the Shulchan Aruch says, based on earlier sources, that if you speak, it's a terrible avera. Look at what the Shulchan Aruch writes in source number 8. Hamisaper ben yishtabach liyotzer. If a person speaks between yishtabach and yotzer, meaning the end of Peskei D'Zimrah and the Berachos Kriyat Shema, avera hi biyado. It's a terrible sin. V'chozer aleha me'orchem melcham. You know how terrible it is? You would go back for more. We know that when the Jewish people were fighting a war that was not a defensive war, but it was an optional war to expand the boundaries. So the high priest would come, generalizing a little bit, but the high priest would come and he would give a speech. Anybody who recently got married, go home. Anyone who recently bought a house, go home. You're going to be too distracted to fight. One of the exemptions, one of the reasons a person can go home, if you're afraid of a sin you have in your hand. And the Gemara says, what's that sin that the Kohen Gadol is referring to? Right over here. If you speak between Yishtabach and Yotzer, it's a sin, you can't battle, go home. Rabbi Schwab says, based on the Mishnah Berurah, that's not what it's really, that is what it literally means, but there's something deeper. When we sit down, or stand as the case may be, to engage in prayer, it's a battle. It's a battle. Trying to refocus on the Almighty, trying to be self-reflective, introspective, trying to focus on what's really important in life. Peskei D'Zimrah is a way to prune away, remove all of those barriers. But if you start talking after you've pruned away, you're going to lose the battle. You're not going to really be able to focus in on God. You just spent all this time Peskei D'Zimrah trimming. So now you're in the zone. You're ready to battle your Yetzer Hara. But you start talking and you distract yourself, you're going to lose. That's what the Shulchan Aruch means. Isn't that beautiful? In source number 8 again, Hamisaper ben yishtabach liyotzer. A person speaks between the end of Peskei D'Zimrah and Berachos Kriyat Shema. Avera hi biyado. It's a sin. V'chozer aleha me'orchem melchama. You will go back from the war because you're not going to have the ability to focus in anymore. You just battled, you pruned, you removed, and now you're letting all those layers come back. And the Mishnah Berurah himself writes this in source number 9. For some reason, my Bar Ilan, the system that I used to make these sheets, was not allowing me to access the Mishnah Berurah, so I just took a picture of it. He writes over here, Me'orchei HaMelchama, Rotze Lomar. What does this mean? Dichsiv B'kra. The Torah tells us, Mi ha'ish hayarei v'harach levav, yelech v'yashuv leveitav. If a person is afraid, specifically because of sin, they should go back home. Don't fight the war. V'amru Chazal, hayarei me'avodas Shabiyado. What are you afraid of? The sins. Vizu gam kain b'chlal averahi. And speaking in between Peskei D'Zimrah and Berachos Kriyat Shema is a sin. V'el Yerabba kasav b'shem Mata Moshe. He quotes in El Yerabba, in the name of Mata Moshe, Sha'klipos mivatlim la'alos hatfila. What are klipos? It's a Kabbalistic term, but it means the layers. The layers do not allow us to fully focus in prayer. And through Peskei D'Zimrah we crush them. Now we understand. Zimra, we're pruning them, we're moving them away. And when we speak, chozrin aleha, the layers come back. B'shvil ha'avera hazos, because of this sin. Osam ha'gedudim she'ma'arichim melchama beinenu, the war that we're internally fighting. Therefore, we should not speak. What a beautiful, beautiful idea. Where the Peskei D'Zimrah is really the beginning of a battle, removing everything which stands in our way when we want to connect with the Almighty. And if we speak and we go back to the regular mundane, we've lost all that ground we've covered in Peskei D'Zimrah. I love that. I thought that was such a beautiful idea, and really just deeper insight into the word shir and zimra. And interesting that we don't call it Peskei D'Shira, we call it Peskei D'Zimrah. We're absolutely using shira. We are singing. These are beautiful songs. Tehillah LeDavid, a praise from David. Shira fills the pages of our siddur, but we call it Zimra because that's really what we're doing. We're pruning away. Yeah. And that's what the Shulchan Aruch tells us in source number 10. We should not say these praise in a quick way, ki'im benachas, slowly, right? And the Be'er Heitev tells us in source number 11, shelo yedalig shum teva, we should not skip any word, velo yavli aim, we shouldn't swallow the words, elo yotzi mipiv ki'ilu mona mos, we should have the words leave our mouth as if we're counting jewels. That's how we should think about Peskei D'Zimrah. We are as deliberate and as careful as a person would be if they're counting their money. Count your money, go very carefully. Make sure you get every single dollar. You don't want to miss a dollar. It's a dollar. Think about how much you could buy with a dollar. If people would have that approach to Peskei D'Zimrah, their prayers would be enhanced exponentially. But it's hard. I myself as well, it's very, very hard. You have a lot to say. You're on a tight schedule, and you have someone else that's setting the pace for you. People have to get out, go to work, wherever they're going during the day, and we don't allot an hour of Peskei D'Zimrah every day, which is probably what it would take if we really tried to say every word carefully, like we count the money. So there's a fine balance between the practicality of davening and getting through your day and meeting all your responsibilities with balancing these jewels that we encounter every time we say Peskei D'Zimrah. It's not an easy balance. Not an easy balance. Yeah. Okay. Let's just do the next two sources, and then we will finish for today. So that was all by way of introduction. Generally, to Peskei D'Zimrah. I think those were some really beautiful ideas. I'm sorry more people weren't here to learn them as I did myself. They're just beautiful. But you'll have to go and share. We'll try to get the video up also. So let's move on to Judy. What were you going to say? Were you going to say something? No? So let's look at Baruch Shamar. Baruch Shamar is the lead-off blessing to this very important process of Peskei D'Zimrah. It's interesting. Baruch Shamar is 87 words, at least according to the Ashkenazic text. And the Mishnah Berurah says that the text of the Baruch Shamar was found by Chachamim, by the rabbis. It was like I didn't have a chance to look up the Mishnah Berurah, but I remember learning it. It was like one of those notes that you put in a little glass bottle and you throw off the boat and you hope it reaches the sea, or you hope it reaches the shore. So that's what happened. That's the tradition says that God basically sent down this prayer with 87 words, and the rabbis found it on this little note, and they said, "Wow, what a beautiful note." Okay, so whether or not that is meant to be taken literally or not is not for the matter of our discussion today, but it just underscores the holiness that we ascribe to this prayer. If you look in Torah, in source number 12, Baruch Shamar, Tzarech la'omro b'nigun u'v'ni'ima. We have to say it with a little bit of a song and with a sweetness. Ki hu shir na'ev v'nechmad, because it's a very beautiful prayer. V'kasa b'sefer hayicholes. He quotes from a sefer hayicholes, not familiar with that sefer. He quotes the pasuk, Rosho kasem paz, that its head is laden with gold. Paz is gold. Paz in Gematria is 87. V'chein nusach Ashkenazim. That's in fact the text of the Ashkenazim. Baruch Shamar has 87 words. Pei Zayin Tevo. So what does it mean? V'rosho kesem gold. V'rosho kesem paz. That at its head, meaning Peskei D'Zimrah, at its head, it starts with Rosho paz. It starts with a kesem paz. It starts with something laden with gold. That's language, by the way, from Anam Zmiros. Exactly. Yeah, let me just give you the exact translation. Yes. Kesem tahor paz demus rosho. A form of the very finest gold upon his head. Kesem tahor paz demus rosho. So it's something along the lines of something laden with gold. So rosho kesem paz, its head is laden with gold, is a reference to Baruch Shamar. And paz, because there are 87 words in 87 words in Baruch Shamar. V'nitkina bracha zu, I'm in source number 12, paragraph 2. Mishum ha di'isa parakol kisvei. The reason we institute this blessing is because the Gemara tells us, Yehei chalki im gomri hala b'chol yom. Because of the Gemara we started with, that Rabbi Yossi says that my portion should be amongst those who recite the Hallel every day. Umaskinan, the Gemara concludes, Ki ka'amar Peskei D'Zimrah. It's talking about Peskei D'Zimrah. Umaynihu, specifically, what is it? Tehillah LeDavid ad kol neshama tal al-ka. Interesting, the Torah says that Peskei D'Zimrah is really from Ashrei, and the next 5 chapters of Tehillim, the last 5 chapters of Tehillim that we say, right after Ashrei. We have Ashrei, and then the next 5 chapters are the last 5 in the book of Psalms. And that's the crux of Peskei D'Zimrah. V'sugar sim parakama de bracho, Sam Rabbi Elazar, kol omer tilo dav b'chol yom. Whoever says Ashrei every day, gimel pamim 3 times, muftach lo shu ben olam haba. He will have a portion of the world to come. We're not going to talk about that right now, but the bottom line is clearly you have to say Ashrei. One of the times we say Ashrei is in Peskei D'Zimrah. V'chein darash abisimlai, also abisimlai. This is the Gemara we did see. L'olam yisader adam shivcho shel makom. Person always has to start by praising God, and then you have to daven. That's why we have all of these prayers before we actually jump into formal prayer in the sense of Shemona Esrei. And because we have an obligation to recite these prayers, and this is the point that we read about in source 13, we're not going to look at the source inside, but the Bach says this is an obligation. You have to frame your prayers through praise. They have to start that way. So since they have to start that way, we make a bracha on it. It's almost like it's a berchas hamitzvah, says the Bach. Berchas hamitzvah is the bracha we make on our talis and our tefillin. We don't usually think of Baruch She'amar, which is a blessing really of praise, as a blessing on a mitzvah. But the Bach says it's really a blessing on a mitzvah. What's the mitzvah? When you set out to pray, you have to start with praise. It's an obligation. So since it's an obligation, the nature of Baruch She'amar is it's actually a berchas hamitzvah. It's a blessing over a mitzvah. A very interesting way of thinking about it. What we'll have to look at next week are the 10 stages of Baruch She'amar. In Baruch She'amar, there are 2 main parts of Baruch She'amar. There's the praise in the first half, and then there's the blessing part itself in the second half. In that first half, there are 10 phrases which praise God. We'll look at those 10 phrases next week, God willing. Okay? All right, so we'll stop here.